While Donald Trump was busy threatening his own party, blocking bridges, and picking fights with allies, Mark Carney was quietly building something that could change the global economy forever. And today, the world found out what it is. Politico broke the story. The European Union, all 27 member states, and the 12-nation Indo-Pacific cptpp trade bloc have begun negotiations to form one of the largest economic alliances in modern history. Nearly 40 countries, 1.5 billion people, a market so large it dwarfs the United States, and Canada is leading it. Let's break down exactly what is happening, why it matters, and why this might be the most important move Carney has made yet. First, the basics. There are two massive trade blocs in the world that most people do not think about. The European Union has 27 member states. It is the world's largest single market. And then there is the cptpp, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. That is 12 nations in the Indo-Pacific region, including Canada, Japan, Australia, Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Mexico, Chile, Peru, New Zealand, Brunei, and the United Kingdom. Until now, these two blocs operated separately. They had their own trade rules, their own supply chains, their own systems. They were parallel highways that never connected. Mark Carney wants to build the bridge between them. At the World Economic Forum in Davos last month, Carney told world leaders directly. He said Ottawa is actively supporting efforts to build a bridge between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union, which would create a new trading bloc of 1.5 billion people. That speech was not just rhetoric. It was a preview of what was already in motion behind the scenes. Politico reports that negotiations have already begun. Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the talks confirmed it. Canada is not just participating. Canada is spearheading the discussions. Carney recently sent his personal representative, John Hannaford, to Singapore to gauge regional appetite for the deal. Hannaford met with leaders across the Indo-Pacific. A Canadian government official told Politico they have had very fruitful discussions with partners around the world. Japan has already signaled strong interest. Yasutoshi Nishimura, Japan's Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry, said Tokyo sees clear advantages in closer trade integration between the EU and cptpp members. He said expanding commerce among these economies would directly strengthen supply chain resilience. Officials in Brussels are reportedly, and I quote, a European trade official here, super keen to pursue the deal. Clemens Fust, director of the IFO Institute, said he hopes that if this is a success, it could entice other countries to join. He said the more the merrier. This is not a vague aspiration. This is a negotiation with meetings, envoys, and working frameworks. Now, what would this alliance actually do? The core mechanism is something called rules of origin. This is the system that determines the economic nationality of a product. Where was it made? What counts as local content? Right now, the EU and cptpp have separate rules of origin. If a Japanese company builds a car part, ships it to Germany for assembly, and then wants to sell the car in Canada, it faces layers of trade bureaucracy. Different rules at every border. If the two blocs agree on shared rules of origin, it creates what trade experts call cumulation. That means a product made with components from any member country would qualify for preferential treatment across the entire bloc. Japanese parts in a German car sold to Canada. Vietnamese textiles processed in Italy. For the Australian market, supply chains would flow freely across 40 countries. This is what supply chain resilience looks like. Not dependence on one country. Diversification across dozens. Now, why is this happening now? One word, Trump. When Trump launched his Liberation Day tariffs, he slapped duties ranging from 10 to 50% on imports from nearly every U.S. trading partner. He used emergency powers that two courts have since ruled illegal. The Supreme Court is expected to rule on the case any day now. But the damage was already done, not to other countries, to America's reputation as a reliable partner. Companies that had built their supply chains around American trade suddenly found themselves paying tariffs they never expected. Countries that had negotiated in good faith saw their deals torn up overnight. The message was clear. If you build your economy around the United States, you are vulnerable to one man's social media posts. Mark Carney saw this coming at Davos. He said, "We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition." He said, "Great powers are using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited." He was describing Trump without ever naming him. And then he told the world what to do about it. Diversify, rebuild sovereignty, unite the middle powers. That is exactly what is happening. Let's talk about what this means for America. Because this is the part Trump and his team are going to hate. If this alliance takes shape, It creates a trading bloc that covers nearly 40 countries with a combined population of 1.5 billion people. The United States has 330 million. America would be on the outside looking in. The EU cptpp combined economy would represent roughly $30 trillion in GDP. That is larger than the American economy, and it would operate under trade rules designed specifically to bypass American tariffs. Companies looking for stable, predictable markets would have a clear alternative. Instead of routing through the United States and risking tariff chaos, they could trade within a bloc that covers Europe, Asia-Pacific, and the Americas through Canada, Mexico, Chile, and Peru. The irony is devastating. Trump imposed tariffs to bring manufacturing back to America. Instead, he is pushing the rest of the world to build systems that exclude America entirely. This is not just about trade. It is about geopolitical alignment. At Davos, Carney called on middle powers to act together. Middle powers are countries that are too big to be ignored, but not big enough to dominate alone. Canada, Japan, Germany, Australia, South Korea, the United Kingdom. These are the countries that traditionally aligned with the United States. They were America's allies, America's partners, America's customers. Trump treated them like adversaries. He tariffed their goods. He threatened their sovereignty. He called Canada the 51st state. He demanded Greenland. He picked fights with NATO allies. And now those allies are doing exactly what you would expect. They are looking for alternatives. Carney is offering one. Not anti-American, not hostile, just independent. A system where countries can trade freely without being held hostage by whoever is in the White House. Now let's connect this to everything else that is happening, because this is the part that makes it powerful. Last week, the House of Representatives voted 219 to 211 against Trump's tariffs on Canada. 6 Republicans crossed the aisle. Democrats are forcing more votes on Mexico, Brazil, and Liberation Day tariffs. The Supreme Court returns to the bench on Thursday, February 20th. A ruling that could strike down all IEP tariffs is expected any day. 2 lower courts have already ruled against Trump unanimously. Trump threatened to block the Gordie Howe Bridge between Detroit and Windsor. Carney called Trump directly and explained Canada paid for the bridge. Michigan officials pushed back immediately. The USMCA, the trade deal between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, is scheduled for review in July 2026. Trump has already threatened to terminate it. If he does, Canada and Mexico, both cptpp members, would have an immediate alternative. They could redirect trade toward Europe and the Indo-Pacific through the new alliance. The United Kingdom, which left the EU but joined the cptpp, would serve as a bridge between the two blocs. Australia and Japan would anchor the Asian side. Germany and France would anchor the European side. Canada would sit at the center, connected to both. This is what Carney meant at Davos, when he said middle powers should diversify to hedge against uncertainty and rebuild sovereignty. He was not making a speech. He was announcing a plan. And through all of this, Carney has not made a single mistake. He did not retaliate blindly when Trump imposed tariffs. He kept Canadian counter-tariffs targeted. He protected Canadian consumers by exempting certain products. He let the facts speak. He spoke at Davos, and the world listened. American governors called it the most important speech of the forum. European leaders quoted it in Brussels. Japanese officials referenced it in Singapore. His liberals are polling at 51%. Canadians are rallying around a prime minister who chose strategy over spectacle. Doug Ford has been right there beside him, banning American liquor from Ontario shelves, calling the House vote an important victory, presenting a united Canadian front. Together, they have shown the world what leadership looks like in a crisis. Not bluster, not tweets, not threats, patience, facts, coalition building. And now the biggest trade alliance in a generation. Here's the bottom line. Trump thought tariffs would make the world come to America on its knees. Instead, nearly 40 countries are building a system designed to go around America entirely. 1.5 billion people, $30 trillion in GDP, supply chains that stretch from Tokyo to Berlin to Ottawa to Singapore. And Canada is at the center of all of it. The cracks are not just showing. The world is moving on, and Canada is leading the way. Mark Carney told the world the rupture was real. Now he is building the replacement.